Hey guys, Dave with Vose here. Boy, it's another beautiful spring day. Pretty much mostly blue skies and warm weather, but there's a few fluffy white clouds above. And the puppies are all laying around being lazy. Finally got all the chickens in an enclosure, and that has helped a great deal. They were just running all over the place, and they had a little pen or a little place where they could get in and keep dry and warm for nighttime where they roosted. But when they're out running around, they're making so much noise I can't even hear myself think. So I finally got the enclosure and they're in there, and I got some plans for that. But friends, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm having a really good day. I got a few things I want to share with you today. I mean, again, I just turned this thing on, and some days I have a little more things in the back of my mind that I'm thinking about than others. But I'll tell you what I'm thinking about today. Um, to me, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, to be honest with you. I mean, it's, one of the most beautiful things. I think this is going to be an amazing topic and be very valuable to a lot of you if you'll hear what I'm saying. Last night, that's right, last night, I just learned about this. And it's just turned on some little wheels in my head, and I've got this all figured out now. I'm sure I'll learn more as we go, but I've always said, well, I don't know if I've always said it, but I've always thought it, and I have said it, and I've been saying it recently, that I really do believe, it's kind of like I had this little vision or this little download the other day, that human beings can be really extremely happy. We're in a dualistic world, yes. And I don't think that's ever going to change, because I don't believe that we will ever exist on clouds where we don't have to exercise or work. We're just floating, and rainbows all around, and little fairies running around, and just lying around with servants going to get us things, and we don't have to do anything. No exertion, no accomplishments, and therefore no pain, but just pleasure, only pleasure, sipping on a margarita forever. I mean, if that were true, what would we do forever? Well, I guarantee I've been watching these chickens, and their whole life, from beginning to end, is food and sex and then a little rest. And that's it. I mean, that's all they do. They wake up in the morning looking for food, and they're looking for food. And when they come of age, the rooster's just strutting around all day long trying to get these girls to notice him. And if they won't notice him, well, then he just takes them anyway. But it's just sex and food and sleep all day long for these guys. They don't care. You might think somebody who's not a farmer or a rancher or whatever you want to call it, but you might think that it's cruel to have chickens pinned up, in a little pen. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think you should put them in those little 1 foot by 1 foot square cages. And, the little hens are just popping eggs out, and that's their only purpose, is sit in this little cage and pop out eggs. And their little claws or talons or whatever those little feet they have are like welded, they grow right to the cage, right? And they live for like a year or two, and then they can't get them out of the cage. You got to cut their feet off, and they die, I guess. And they throw them in a bin and grind them up for dog food or something. That's cruel. That's disgusting. I get that. But in nature, I do believe that I don't know how or why, but I do believe that everything's provided in a very amazing way. That horses have a little sway back so you can ride them. And I don't think, mind if you don't abuse them. I think they like the relationship they have with humans. And I think probably elephants were made to take their tusks and go under some logs and use their trunk to hold the logs, and you can log timber with these elephants. People used to do that. Nowadays, we don't know what elephants are for. But they don't have any real use for their tusks, I guess, other than maybe they use them to fight each other like the elk do with their antlers. But I think that chickens are, I realize that chickens are more of a hybrid from what they used to be or whatever. But I lived in Idaho, and if you go out through the woods there, and I'm sure this is the same all the way through Canada and Russia and different places around the world, a lot of the world, there's chickens running all over in the wild. We call them grouse. And some of those grouse are about, I'd say, half as big as a chicken. Darn near as big, pheasants, those kinds of birds. They're pretty good size. And they're a natural bird. I don't think it would be extremely hard to imagine that humans would get the grouse or the pheasants or whatever these. How about wild turkeys? They're huge. All through Oklahoma and Arkansas and Texas, and turkeys running everywhere. And they're like not quite as big as the big white turkey that you see on somebody's farm, but they're pretty darn big. So chickens and these kinds of birds and turkeys and pheasants are natural. And, the kinds that we call chickens, are just, they're not really that hybrid. They're really just the type of bird that are natural, and they pop these eggs out. And they can continue to pop these eggs out, and they don't really have any use for all the eggs, because the only reason for the eggs is so they can reproduce in the wild. But they're easy to bring into a farm situation and build a little pen, and then you get these eggs, and they can provide a lot of protein and cholesterol, good cholesterol for your diet. But the reason I'm saying that is because it's just natural. And there's another use for these chickens that I've just found out, and I want to share that with you. There is a natural thing. It's kind of what we got today when we call the farm, right? You got the chickens for your eggs. The cows, they just produce milk. Once they've started producing milk, you can keep milking them every day till they get old and die. But a lot of people would think, well, that's unnatural, Dave. No, it's not at all, because milk is something that we can use. It's very healthy. The original milk that's not homogenized, it's not pasteurized. It is so healthy, and you can take the cream and you make the butter. And of course, yes, in the back in the 50s, they told you that the butter was bad for you, but that's a lie. Butter is so healthy and good for you, and you can make cheese. And I guarantee that they've been using cheese and buttermilk and cottage cheese and sour cream and all these things for thousands of years and generation after generation, and it is part of a healthy diet. But it is a way that the Lord has provided in nature that some of us already know about. Man has known about these things. But I want to share with you something today that the Lord's been sharing with me that we have forgotten. Kind of like what we used to talk about with the mushrooms, because I don't know for how many hundreds of years they've been telling us that mushrooms are all poison, don't eat them. Well, they have uses. Another thing they've been telling us is don't do drugs, right? Drugs are evil, and if you're a Christian, you were told if you ever do drugs, you're going to hell. And you're going to be laughed at, and you're going to get addicted, and you're going to be, walking around with no teeth and hair falling out and dying. And you can't even support yourself because you'll be flipping around on the street. And you're going to hell. But here's the thing. All of these things that people take that make them flip out on the street and lose their job and everything, is chemicals. Those aren't drugs. Well, we can call them drugs if you want, but let's call them what more specific. They're chemicals. They're man-made chemicals to kill you. Herbs, on the other hand, according to the Bible, are for the healing of the nations. And they were created for healing. And I believe that we can micromanage our healing as well. So I've got some, let's say, some mushrooms, okay, coming. And I didn't realize that it was going to be a little bit more difficult than I thought to grow them. I thought, well, you just squirt them on the ground and they start coming up, growing on the ground to keep them moist and it'd be easy. Well, it isn't that easy, but we're going to do it. We're going to try to do that. And I got some other stuff growing out in the garden, if you know what I mean. Well, the first batch I ruined. I put Miracle Grow on it. My good friend Rob up in Michigan was kind enough to tell me how to do the second batch so I don't mess up that. But he did tell me as well that when you have a plant, and he was talking about this particular plant that's starting to wilt and, you ruined it or you fried it, because I was using Miracle Grow and it fried it. You can't use that. Friends, that's chemicals. I guess it works good with your roses, but it's, maybe with some things, but it's not good for, so more important, medicinal plants, let's say. So I'm never going to buy Miracle Grow again. But hey, it was at Walmart, and that's about the only thing they sell there. And this other thing that I didn't know anything, I thought, well, it's good for roses. We'll try it, right? But anyway, what I did and what he told me to do was carefully pull the plant back up out of the soil, which wasn't difficult because it was in potting soil. So, I just came right out. And it was all wilty and dying and everything and shriveled up. And I put it in some just kind of room temperature water and let it soak for several days. And I believe I might have saved some of them. And yesterday I went ahead and replanted them now in actual potting soil, organic, and not in any kind of Miracle Grow. But anyway, I'm getting off my subject here. Those things are made by nature for us. And they're part of our normal life that we need, that we're not getting in this world. They've been lying to us. And let me start by saying this. Start 13 minutes in. But let me say at the outset here, what I'm going to share with you is, I described to a friend of mine kind of like a golden key that will open just about every door. And we're not talking about spiritual doors here. We're talking about the door to happiness, long life, really happiness, right? Because if I were to tell you what I would be inclined to tell you is that we got to get out of the world. We can't be happy in the world. Yeah, the luxury car, the penthouse, on Broadway, and all the things that the golden toilet seats and all these things that we thought we wanted didn't bring happiness. And all it did was make us unhappy, and we're all dying, right? So the first thing I would say is get out of the world and do what? Well, go into nature. Now, a lot of you say, yeah, but, in town, the houses have heat. How can I be happy if I got to go out and chop firewood every day? And that's a lot of work. And, there's a lot of problems with living out there. And what were you going to eat if you don't go to the store? How would you be able to garden and live off of potatoes and onions and tomatoes? Most people don't like that kind of stuff. They think they wouldn't like that. Would they be missing their pizza and all this stuff? So people think that happiness is living in the city. But for those of you who've already decided, well, I would be really happy if I could just be a gardener. If I could live my life and have this little paradise and there's flowers growing everywhere. It's like living at Busch Gardens. You ever been there? Oh my goodness, when I was a kid, we used to go there a couple times because I'd go down to visit my grandma who lived in Burbank when I was little. And they would take me to Disneyland. I went there once or twice. And Knott's Berry Farm and Universal Studios even we went to. But you know what? My favorite place, even then, I was like 9 years old, was the Busch Gardens. I loved it. Or even just the San Diego Zoo or the zoo. I don't think it was San Diego where we went to. I'm not sure, but there was a zoo down there, and I've been to other zoos all over the country, different places, and I love going to the zoo. I like the flowers, the little ponds, the little waterways, and little bridges over the waterways, and the ducks, and feeding the ducks, and the beautiful flowers, and if I could live in a beautiful paradise garden like that, I would be happy. Oh, buddy. But the problem is I'm not. I always thought, well, I'm not a gardener. Everything I ever tried to grow, it just died. Partly because, maybe I think a lot of it was just I didn't have the money to buy the proper things and get the greenhouse built and do all these things that you needed to do, and it was all a lot of work, and you got the logistics about where you're going to come up with the water. I mean, if you lived in town, you got city water, or if you had a really good well or something, sure. But like where I'm at, my problem is, where am I getting enough water to make enough, to have a garden to feed the whole family, and keep the grass green and have it all nice and water the dogs and the chickens and everything. There's all these logistics. And I think a lot of people are overwhelmed with, how would you do this? Let's say you're in Alaska. A lot of people go to Alaska because they want to get out of the world. Well, it's 40 below in the winter. You can't grow anything up there, and there's very short growing season. Yeah, you can grow in the summer, but you got to go buy seeds. Where are you going to get your seeds? It's just a lot of work. We don't know how to do it. We think, well, a lot of these secrets have been lost, like I was talking about with the chickens, and people today think, oh, I wouldn't eat eggs that came out of a chicken's butt. Yuck. That's the healthiest, most perfect, balanced diet you've ever seen, is eggs. And it's provided for you. But guess what we're going to share with you today? Something that's in nature that I don't know if everybody has it. I don't know if you're out in the Mojave Desert, you'd have it. But at least areas where it's like jungle or forested land, and even where I'm at, which is kind of a desert forest kind of thing, there's a lot of trees. I even got ponderosas and big trees that I don't even know the names of them, that are huge. Takes 3 people to go around the butt. But they're sparse, they're not like thick, dark forests. And there's some grass and stuff, but it's kind of a desert. There's cactus and stuff growing around. And not a lot of water. Well, there's a way that you can catch water. But again, it's logistics and trying to do all of this. But I'm going to share something with you today that I learned yesterday. And it just came to me after I saw this. And it blew my mind. And the Lord it's like this download just came, and I just realized that probably within 3 years, which is about how long we're going to have here, 3.5 years of this tribulation, I'll say by the end of this year, this place will be a paradise. Close to it. By the end of the 3.5 years, I think we're going to have a paradise out here. And I've got a way now that you've never in your life heard of. Probably. I mean, maybe some of you have heard of it barely, but not the way I'm going to explain it to you. How you can, even in Alaska, you can make a greenhouse and you can produce oranges the size of grapefruits, bananas, you can have pineapple, you could have all the things you can imagine. And they will grow year round. Did you know tomatoes will grow year round? You don't have to uproot it and kill the plant and replant it. That tomato plant will last 8 years. If you have it in a good environment, it becomes stable and it's growing, and the winter doesn't come and kill it. If you keep it in an area where it doesn't get affected by the temperatures. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to try and get a banana plant and the pineapples and all the things that, I love bananas and pineapples and things. Even though they are a little bit hybridized and all of that. But hey, it's a good treat. I've already planted grapes and raspberries and mulberry trees and almonds and apples and plums and pears. I've got roses and begonia. I think it's begonia. They're beautiful. I know what they are, but I forgot how to pronounce it. I've got lilacs, a white one and a reddish purple one. I've got other beautiful flowers. I don't even know the name. And I'm growing, let's see, did I say almonds, pecans, potatoes, onions, garlic. But I wanted to grow bananas and pineapples, and I'd heard that it's possible to do, but I don't have electricity out here. Of course, the Lord has provided me with, I think it's 3,300 watt solar panels and a whole bunch of batteries, and I've got to get that all set up. So I've got enough to power an entire house if I needed freezers and air conditioners and an ordinary house, what you would normally run washer dryer. I've got a washer and dryer that I'm going to hook up and everything out here. But so the solar is an amazing gift. But part of the problem is the heating. Now, normally if you had heat and you heated it with electric, you'd need a lot of electricity. I don't know if I'd have quite enough for that. So people use gas or propane. So I also went out and got a bunch of propane bottles and had them all filled. I got lots of propane, enough to provide all the propane I need for the 3.5 years. But if I were to use it to heat, I wouldn't have enough for a few months. You know what I mean? It would go right. You use it right up. Of course, I have wood stove and I have that all going, but that's a lot of work. Go out and chop your wood, and it's uneven heat, and it's Well, I've discovered a way to keep my trailer, and I'm going to try and build a cabin here. I can keep that warm during the winter, and the greenhouse warm enough to grow tomatoes all year, bananas and pineapples, and other things. And I'll tell you how I've discovered this. I was watching YouTube last night, and this guy said, there was a video that says, I grow oranges the size of grapefruits in Utah where it's 40 below. And let me tell you, buddy, up there in the Wasatch Mountain ranges in southern Idaho and the Sawtooth Mountains and that whole area around Livingston and Montana and everything in Wyoming, it's cold. Down at the bottom of the mountain in town, it's 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet. And if you're living out of town up in the mountains or in the hills or whatever, you're probably 8,000, 9,000 feet. And I'm guarantee that when winter comes, it's going to snow 4, 5, 6 feet, sometimes 10 feet. It does all the time. And it can reach around the middle of January, it can reach 40 below. It does quite often, at least 20 or 30 below usually. And so you're going to have 2 or 3 weeks where it's so cold that it doesn't matter what you do, you would kill everything in your garden unless you had some way to heat it. Now, even wood stove, you might, if you stayed up all night out there in your greenhouse, not getting any sleep, making sure the fire was going, you could save your plants, but that's a dry heat. Your plants aren't going to thrive on that wood heat. And so there's a lot of factors. And even though there's a lot of rotten kind of wood just laying everywhere around here, trees just fall over. But it's hard there's not that many trees out here. You really don't want to cut down green trees and then let them age one year like you're normally supposed to do to have good wood. So though there is lots of wood out here, it's wood that it just kind of burns up real fast. And I think eventually I would run out of wood in the nearby area doing that. So it's not a very good solution for a greenhouse or growing things in the winter. But I'm watching this program and I'm thinking, how is he probably talking about thermo heating, and I was talking to you guys before about that, and that's something I was going to try and do. So I got this backhoe and I was going to make a trench, but I didn't know all the details of how to do that. It's a lot more complicated than I thought. I thought I was just going to dig me a trench 8 feet deep, 150 feet long, something like that, and put some pipe in there and put a little fan on it, and it would blow, because the temperature under the ground at, I think, 8 feet, pretty much wherever you go, even up in Alaska, is like 50 to 55 degrees. And so if you're in the winter and it's below zero, and you've got this venting the air beneath the ground into your greenhouse or your house at 55 degrees, well, you'll raise the temperature in there around 50, 55 degrees, which is well above freezing, and you can grow plants. And you can have a wood stove in there as well if you needed it. But that would work pretty good, and there's people that's doing that. There's people raising oranges and things like that and citrus in Nebraska. There's a guy on the YouTube that does it with this. And so then I watched some more programs on how to do this, and I found out that you don't just put a pipe in the ground. These pipes are filled with fluid, and there's radiators. It's a lot of work and a lot of money. It's like $10,000, $15,000. I didn't have the money for that. And there were other, ways that people said you could maybe do this or that, but it wouldn't be efficient if you didn't have the fluid in the lines and the radiators and all this stuff. But if you just had air and you were blowing it, it might not really work. You'd have to have a lot of pipe. So I was thinking, oh no, maybe that won't work too good. And it's a lot of work. So I was kind of getting discouraged, and I was thinking, okay, I got the greenhouse, I got the wood stove. I guess I'll just have to stay up all night during the winter. But, I wanted to make the whole place a paradise. I was thinking, how could we do this? It's going to freeze in the winter, and you're not going to be able to grow things because the ground around here is all sand. And how are you going to buy enough potting soil to, it was an expensive idea. And people are saying, well, just have compost, right? And make your own soil. Well, that takes time. And I thought, okay, I'll try that. But come on, I don't go through that many potato peelings and banana peelings and things like that to make a lot of compost. Yes, I could go buy a whole bunch of hay, and that will help. I could throw hay in a pile and some wood chips in, and there you go. That costs money. But you still got to come up with a way to keep it all warm. And so it was a big ask and a big question mark, and I was starting to get a little worried about how I was going to have this paradise out here. And I'm watching this, and I think, okay, this guy's going to show us how we can grow oranges the size of grapefruits in 40 below. So he says, here's how he does it. He went out and bought all these wood chips. I guess he got them for free. Somebody didn't want them or something. I don't know. Had these big dump trucks full of wood chips, and they dumped them, piles and piles, like little mountains of them. And he built this greenhouse out of plastic that he got from other people's greenhouses, where it got a little rip, and they would take it all down, and he'd take the pieces and put it all together and hodgepodge it together. And he had this little greenhouse. And about 2, 3, 4 feet off the ground, like little mounds around the greenhouse, he piled up wood chips. And then he also, in areas, he would pile up bales of hay. He got hay from somebody free, I don't know, or something. And he also had these buckets with water, like 50-gallon buckets. Looked like most of the buckets he had was like old coolers, like 10-gallon coolers. And he had it all filled with water, and he had them all stacked around in there. And I thought, what? How is that going to keep it warm in the greenhouse with buckets of water and 3 foot high, or maybe it was 4 feet in some areas, wall of wood chips and hay around it? And he showed in the temperature in the thermostat and what would happen if it got outside, it was 40 below, what the temperature was inside and stuff. And I was like, well, this is crazy. But I could do that. Except then I thought, wait a minute, how am I going to come up with that much hay? I went down to the store the other day, not even related to this. I was thinking about, I want to get a bunch of straw and stuff like that and put it all over the garden. Because that, and you can use it for compost, and it keeps your plants warmer. Like if it freezes or something, a little bit of freezing, and you have straw, I knew that would keep the roots warm, and you could, if it was a little bit of frost, you could get through it. But I didn't know this stuff that I'm going to tell you. So I already went down there and priced straw and hay, and I went and got some straw and I got some hay. And it was like $15 a bale, which might not sound so bad, but you need more than a bale. You need more than 10 bales. You need a lot if you're going to have a lot of garden. So I didn't have a lot of money. I was thinking, man, what am I going to do? And how's this going to help everything anyway? So when I saw that, I thought, well, this is great. So I did some more research and I watched a couple more videos. And then I found another video of this guy who had this little greenhouse. And he explained it. He explained it better. The other guy made me think that it was all about the wood chips and the hay. And I was thinking, how is that? Because once you have piles of wood chips and stuff, it begins to decompose. And that releases heat out of the bales. But I'm thinking, how is that going to warm a greenhouse, really, enough? But what is this idea of the buckets with water? Well, he never really explained that part. So this guy explained it. He didn't even have the bales of hay. He didn't even have the wood chips much. He did say that he had some brick on the floor and some concrete, and that helped. And I was like, I don't know how that helped. And he put some gravel in there. But what he had was these 55-gallon drums, which I have a bunch of them, and I'm going to go get more now. But you fill them with water, and you line your whole greenhouse with these things. So he had like about 250 gallons of water in this greenhouse. And it was a small greenhouse. I mean, not real small, but it was like probably half the size of the one I have. So I figured, okay, so his worked. I've got to have at least 500 gallons of water. So that's about 10 barrels. And I have that many, and I'm going to go get more. And I had a bunch more. I've been buying these barrels. Are like $20 for these plastic barrels. 55-gallon barrels you get in Concho, Arizona. And you go out there and pick them up. So I'm going to go get some more. But I think, about 30 of them. I'm only going to need 10 or 15 of them. Maybe 10 or 12 of them. I don't know, something like that. In my greenhouse. And that's going to keep it warm in there. And here's how it works. During the day, and especially around here, even in the winter, the sun comes out and hits that greenhouse. And the temperature in that greenhouse in the winter will rise up to 60, 70, 80 degrees. Sometimes if it's real warm, it might be 80. At least 60 probably, if the sun's beaten down. And when the sun beats down and it's 60, 70 degrees in there, it heats the water in those jugs, in those 55-gallon barrels, to that temperature. And water is the type of substance that it takes a while to get it warm. Like even a pan of water on the stove takes 5 minutes to boil, right? So 55 gallons of water will take hours and hours to warm it to 70 degrees. Well, you've got all day, right? From the morning till the sun goes down, it's beaming sundown. And once you get that many barrels of water up to your 70 degrees, it could be 80. Then when the sun goes down at night and it's below freezing outside, those barrels of water, I don't know how, don't ask me, but I seen proof of it with several people showing me that, especially if you line your greenhouse with hay or wood chips, that it stays above freezing and well above freezing so that your tomatoes and everything will grow all year. Now you say, that's a wonderful idea. It's amazing, but you still got to go out and buy barrels, Dave. Well, like I told you, they're only like $20 a barrel. You can buy them probably just about anywhere you're at. Just look on Marketplace. Hauling them, you can get I got I think 12 of them in the back of my truck. I went and got two, 3 loads. Fill them with water. If you've got a hose, you can fill them with water. If not, the way I do it is I take them down here to this well. And on this, these natives here have this community well. And you get a little card and they put money on your card. And I go in there and put money on the card and fill my jugs up in the back of my truck. It's about 5 cents a gallon or something. I don't know. It ends up being $2 for a 55-gallon barrel. So 10 barrels is like $20. It's really cheap. But you say, okay, but wood chips is going to be expensive. Hay is expensive. But it isn't that expensive. If you had to go buy it, right? Most of you probably got the finances for that. But I got a better idea. Wait till you hear this. I was listening to this guy and I was thinking, wait a minute. This is crazy. Because underneath each and every one of my pine trees, or the juniper trees, or the ponderosas, under all my trees, there is a foot deep of pine cones, wood chips, and pine needles. And under my oak trees, there's oak leaves and stuff. Now, somebody's saying, oh, but that's all acidic. Well, it turns out it's not. Yeah, if you put pine needles or oak leaves on your garden, that's acidic. It might not be good for it. But if you take the oak leaves and the pine needles and put them in a big pile and let them begin to decompose, and this is how you make mulch. Matter breaks down and it turns it into this amazing garden soil, right? And it doesn't take that long. But if you take pine needles and pine cones and oak leaves and just whatever's wood, pieces of wood, everything is going to break down over time. But of course, you put piles of sticks, that's going to take way too long to break down. Although if you piled hay on it and other leaves and mulch and your potato peelings and banana peels and everything else on there, it will, over the spring and summer, it will start to break it down and it'll turn into mulch. But it's going to take a lot of time to break down branches. But under these trees is not only pine needles, but there is areas where it's just wood chips everywhere on the ground. Why? Because most of my trees only live so many years and they fall over. So if you're walking around, some of you have seen my videos, you see you're walking around and about every 30 feet is another log laying on the ground and it's just decomposing. It's falling apart. And you go over there and hit it with an axe or a hammer and you can see that it's kind of rotting. So it's already like wood chips, rotting wood right there. I got a wheelbarrow. You can load that wheelbarrow up with all this decomposing log. You can go under the trees and take a rake. Each and every one of my trees, I take a rake and I made a big pile. And it's just decomposing pine needles and pine cones and sticks and, grass. And all the grass out here dies every year. During the winter, it dies, and it makes what looks to be like a little layer of hay all over the ground. So I'm raking all this up, and I went into a pile with this, and it's about a third grass, decomposing. There's probably a third pine needles, and another third of just pieces of wood and little chips of wood, because all these branches are breaking down by themselves as you're walking on them and everything. It is perfect. You can pretty much use anything to use, as for mulch, other than sand. I got a lot of sand. That's already down to about as refined as much as it's going to go. It's not going to decompose, but matter will decompose, and that makes soil. So there's where you get your soil, and you've got it everywhere, tons of it out here. And probably if you were in Alaska or anywhere in Russia or Europe or in Arkansas or wherever you go out under the oak trees and pecan trees, it's just mulch everywhere. But now here's the good news. That's good news there. You got good soil. You can find it everywhere. But even better than that, you stack that mulch or all those chips, those wood chips, up against your greenhouse. And all that dead grass that you've raked up. And you stack that up there, it begins to decompose. And that starts putting out heat. And according to that one guy I watched, that was all he needed to keep his greenhouse warmer. But when I saw the other guy showing the other part of this, that you need barrels of water so that when the sun comes down, it raises the temperature of the water, and that acts like a thermo heater, it just dawned on me that it would be so simple to put barrels of water in my greenhouse and take all of this mulch and all of these wood chips and all of this grass and stuff that's laying around all over my yard and push it up against the greenhouse, up against the pony wall about 3 or 4 feet high, all the way around. And then I thought, well, okay, once I get that up there, I'll plant grass and make it sloped. So it'll be like a little sloping yard all the way around the greenhouse. And inside I'm going to have these water jugs. And then I thought, well, what about my cabin and the trailer? I want to keep warm in there too. Well, what you can do, see, I've got 2 big trailers, park model trailers. They're not real big, but you know, they're like travel trailers, but they're park models. So they got a bedroom in the back and a nice shower and bathroom and a sink area for the kitchen and all this. And they're big enough to live in, not too spacious, but like 40 something feet long. I think one of them's 42 feet long or something. The other one's like 40 foot long. But I parked them and then I put them up on blocks. So there's like 2.5, 3 feet underneath them. I guess 2.5 feet. And I was thinking, well, I don't like that. You know, all this air underneath of them. I guess I'll skirt them, right? Put some wood skirting around it. Well, then it hit me. Why don't I take bales of hay? Now, I don't know offhand. I haven't even thought about it. Might take 30, 40 bales of hay. I don't know, for each trailer. So it's going to be like a couple of $100. So you're going to line under your trailer. You're going to line it with this hay or straw. But there's still going to be air under your trailer. You're just going to line the outside of it with the hay. But you're not going to have it on the outside, but it's going to be under the trailer, right up with the side of the walls of the trailer. So it's kind of under, but you still got a hollow area inside of that. And then up against the hay, I'm going to do just what I was going to do with the greenhouse. I'm going to take these wood chips and all this grass and everything is free all throughout the forest here. Wheelbarrow it over to my trailer and line the whole trailer with that on the outside and make a little sloping terrace, I guess. As you step out of the trailer, all the way around the trailer, there's just sloping hillside of wood chips, straw, and everything that'll be putting out heat. It not only is it insulation, right, but it's literally warm. If you were to dig down in that pile of chips, you'd find the temperature under there would be like 80 to 90, 100 degrees. Not so hot that it would catch on fire, though, but it's going to be warm. And that heat's going to be radiating up through the floor in your trailer. But not only that, you're going to have maybe underneath your trailer in that hollow area, you could put barrels of water. That's going to be like a storage for heat. It's going to store the heat. And on the days where the sun comes out and keeps it warm, it'll warm those barrels of water up. And that will radiate through your trailer. And the barrels of water will get warm because during the day the temperatures go up, but also because all of the hay and the wood chips are radiating 80-degree temperatures into that tank and heating that water. All of this is going to be $200, $300, $400 That's all it's going to take for one trailer. And during the winter, it's going to be warmer than you would probably imagine. Now, you, of course, would still have a wood stove in your trailer. I like wood stoves anyway, and I like having a fire going. But if you neglected to put wood in the fire or something like this, it's nice to have a living space that doesn't drop below freezing while you're in bed at night, you know? So that's just an extra. But the great part about this is that the greenhouse can be heated for no cost, no propane, no wood, no work. Once you get the water barrels in there, it's like permanent. And they're radiating heat out there all the time. And the plastic on my greenhouse is good for 5 years. So that'll get me all the way through this whole tribulation period. And when they do start to deteriorate, I could, put more plastic on them. But that's not all. So now I got my greenhouse taken care of, and it's beautiful. And I've got this sloping garden terrace, and we can plant flowers and everything. And the trailer's going to stay warm. But get this, I can get more hay, line my flower beds with the hay, and pile the wood chips around that, and have little stakes all around the perimeter of this garden bed. And when winter comes, all you got to do is have a sheet of plastic that you pull over, and you've got a little greenhouse. You don't have to take your tomatoes in, or your garden stuff doesn't have to necessarily be moved into a greenhouse, because you're going to make a little mini greenhouse right where your plants are. And as far as my trees, most of the trees that I've got, like apples and stuff, will live through winters by themselves, and they come back to life every spring. But if you do have banana trees or something like that, you'll have to have them in the greenhouse. But even the trees, the apples and the pecans and all the others, you put a layer of straw and stuff around the base of the tree. And especially during the winter, you might, like I say, you wouldn't have the money, or if you're in the tribulation and you can't go buy hay, you can just go out into the woods around here and rake the ground and get bales of grass, and take that grass and line your tree beds and stuff like this. So here's what is so exciting. Not only are we going to have a way to heat your greenhouse and your house for no money, but the tools that you need are laying everywhere, all over your ground, all over your yard. And nobody even knew that it was there and what it was used for. You can rake all of your trees, all of this mulch, all of these chips, and all this grass into big piles, and let them decompose and make these little mulch gardens. And you can use it for soil, but you can also pile it up while it's mulching around little garden beds and make your whole 5 acres or whatever you own, however many acres you have. Eventually, you can rake these piles around all kinds of garden beds and have all kinds of amazing things growing in little mini greenhouses during the winter. And during the summer, you pull the plastic off, and you've got this amazing little paradise. Now, as far as the water situation, even here where I'm at, where there's no rivers or creeks, and I'm going to try and dig a well, but if I don't hit water, I'm going to dig a big area, which is like a pond at the base of a ravine that I've got picked out over here. And when it rains, the water comes down that ravine, and it'll just fill that pond up. And all that water in that pond can be used for gardening. But I also went out and got some tarps, and they're not ordinary tarps. They're very hard vinyl tarps. They're like, 5 times more durable than your ordinary tarp that you get at Walmart or Tractor Supply. And they're actually cheaper, and they're larger. They're huge tarps. They put them on billboards all over the place, and I guess, I don't know why, but they're selling them all over the place. You'll probably find them in your area too. Look on the marketplace. And you can get these 30 by 50 tarps for, I think, $30 or something. It's crazy. And I bought a bunch of them. And they're large. I got one that's something like 50 feet by 30 feet or something. And then the rest of them are like 20 by 30 or 15 by 30 or something. I don't remember. But anyway, I'm going to take and put them up all over in certain locations, like over the trailer, over different areas around my place, and have one end of these tarps a little lower than the other ends. And when it rains, all the water will come down and it will be funneled into these barrels. And I'll have, you might think, well, that's not enough water for showers and things like that. Like I said, the pond might be used for the greenhouse gardening. But for drinking and bathing, I will have a lot of water. Here in the summer months of June, July, and August, it rains like monsoon rains. And if you got an area like 20 by 40 or whatever it would be that's collecting water, that area itself will probably produce enough water for the whole garden. I just saw a guy that lives in some city, and he collects all the water off of his house and garage and his tool shed. And it all goes into this big, giant water storage that he made out of corrugated steel or whatever. Now, of course, that's expensive, and you'd have to have some money to build a big water storage tank like that. It was like thousands of gallons. It was, I don't know, probably 30 feet by 20 feet high, or I'd say 10 feet high, 30 feet wide circle. So that's probably thousands of gallons of water. I don't know the exact figure. But it was enough water, you could just see the size of this tank. It'd be enough water for all of his needs, even probably the gardening. And that's just getting the water that runs off of his roof, his garage, and his tool shed. Now, where he was, it may rain there more than it rains here, but it still rains quite a bit here. In June, July, and August, it rains for like 5 days out of every month. So for 5 days, and we're not talking about sprinkles, it thunder showers and just pours down. And within just an hour or so, you can fill up thousands of gallons. And I'm going to have these tarps all over the place. So there's how I'm going to have my water along with the pond. That's going to provide me with all the water that I'm going to need. But anyway, I just thought this was the most amazing thing, because like we were talking about with the chickens, they just produce eggs and they're just the healthiest thing you can eat. Cows just produce milk and you can make butter and cheese. And it just seems to be all there for us, provided for us. But just like we didn't know that these mushrooms were medicinal, that the herbs were available, that we ought to microdose on certain herbs, and it may be part of the reason why our health or our mental health is not as good as it ought to be, because we're not eating the right foods. Instead of these herbs, we're downing quarts of high fructose corn poison every day. Instead of these herbs, we're sucking down nicotine in our cigarettes, and we're eating preservatives and poisons. And this is not making our mood better, it's making our mood worse. It's making us ill, tired, lethargic, lazy. It's dulling our mind, all the aluminum and the heavy metals and all the food. And by the way, a lot of you are still drinking tap water and you probably don't even think about it. You go to the restaurant and you order coffee and they're using tap water to make your coffee and your food. And if you go to the store and you buy food, you don't know if they've used good mineral spring water. Probably not. Many of these factories are making breads and cookies and pastries or whatever they're making. Not only do they have all these other poisons in it, but they have to put a lot of water in all this food to make it. And they just say one of the ingredients is water, but how do we know if there's not a bunch of chlorine in that? But the other day, it dawned on me that I've been going down to this well and getting my water, and I've been having back troubles and pain. And I kept thinking, well, it was that cookie I ate. It's like I only ate 3 cookies, but my back would hurt. And I hadn't been feeling good. And I've been sleeping well. I kept thinking, what's going on? Well, the other day it hit me. I went over there and put my nose up to that water that I'm getting out of that well down here that they give these native peoples, just like they do the people in the inner cities and all this tap water all around the world. And I smelled it and I said, I'll be darned, that's got a lot of chlorine. I can smell it. So I went downtown and I got me a Brita. Oh, actually, it wasn't Brita. I don't know what brand it was. I can't remember. But anyway, I went and got Brita filters because they're interchangeable because it didn't have a filter. I got it at the Goodwill, little pitcher, you can put the filter in. And the Brita filters fit in there. And I started using that. And within one day, my back stopped hurting. I got more energy. I don't feel tired. I feel so much better. I guarantee you got to stop drinking tap water, friends. And that means if you go to a motel and you use the water there, or even when you go and you take a long shower every day, or bathing in this water that's tap water, you're bathing in chlorine and other poisons and heavy metals, and it's ruining your skin. It's drying out your skin. It's drying out your hair and your body. So inside and out, you're getting this poison. Friends, it's really important to buy mineral water and drink that. But that's leaching the plastic. So go ahead and pour that into a Brita pitcher with the filter. But even better is if you got your own well, or if you know somebody who does, and if not, you can drive maybe out of town and find a creek and get your water there. Just get 10, 20 gallons and go out every time you need more drinking water. But if you have to shower or bathe in this water in these cities, take a shower. Don't bathe in it, and just stand under the water long enough to get the dirt off of you. Don't soak in it, because the chlorine is literally killing you. So those are the things that I've been thinking about. And it's making my heart glad because, friends, I can see that this is going to go much further than you can imagine. It's not just a way for me to live out here and have my greenhouse produce fruit. That in itself is amazing. But it has just showed me that you could literally revolutionize and bring the world back to a paradisical glory if all the people from today onward that lived on this planet, it won't happen because all these people are, part of this world, and they're all running around mindlessly doing whatever the government tells them, living in cities. But after this tribulation is over, there's probably not going to be that many people left. And we're going to have to make this world a garden, a paradise. And I always thought, well, it would just by nature, it would probably turn into a paradise, because if we stopped going out and killing all the animals, they'd become tame. And if we stopped polluting the earth, why, it would probably grow into a beautiful place and the environment would change. And I thought, but wait a minute. If we took and made our 5 acres into a paradise and started mulching and decomposing this matter faster than nature, because you're piling it up, it's producing, that's how you make oil. Oil under the ground is being produced because of the topsoil mulching and decomposing down to a liquid black oil. Now that black oil goes down under the ground and seeps down into these caverns just like water does. And you have these little oil lakes under the ground. Well, oil can catch on fire, so it does. And when it catches on fire, what happens is the earth starts to get, steam comes out of the cracks and volcanoes occur. Volcanoes send ash and minerals into the air. We've been taught that this is bad for the environment, but that's not true. Back in the days when they, very likely, it seems like science has said that when the world was lush and these animals were huge, mega giants like dinosaurs were walking around, the earth was in some sort of a jungle condition, apparently. And all of this foliage was making mulch, and all this process kept it that way. The more you grew on the earth, the more mulch, the more oil, the more fires, the more smoke, the more heating, and the more of a greenhouse effect. I don't know it has anything to do with age, friends. We've been told that the earth is so old, and if it gets to a certain age, then it cools down or something, and it's nothing to do with man. And I was thinking maybe the world is more of a desert now because of human beings being deprived of living like human beings in nature, as a gardener, as a farmer. And that was the way we're supposed to live. And if we all made our little 5 acres a garden, and we did that all over the world, that there would be more oil under the ground. In fact, we wouldn't be sucking it out, using it as fuel for our cars either. So there'd be more in that sense too. And over time, this beautiful paradise that we would make would make the earth more paradisical, and the ecology would completely change. And of course, if the world changed ecologically and it got warmer and happier and grew fruit and everybody had food, then the animals wouldn't be wild and killing each other and starving. I think animals like coyotes begin to eat meat because they're starving. I don't think they were meant to eat meat. They say that gorillas have little fang-like teeth that look like they could rip flesh off of an animal, and they say, oh, they're carnivores. And then somebody comes along and says, no, those teeth, humans have those too. And it doesn't mean we're carnivores. It means we can use those front teeth to open up and bite into an apple or break a walnut open or something. They're not telling us the truth. Gorillas are not carnivores. They're herbivores. And I wonder if we started living properly as humans, if we wouldn't turn this beautiful world within 1,000 years into paradise, and the lion would lay down and eat straw like the bull. Anyway, it looks like we're over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and go. I spent the whole video today talking about this greenhouse stuff, but I'm excited. I hope it was informative and it gave you some ideas. It did me. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I hope you have a wonderful evening, guys. The Lord will bless you. Just seek Him and pray and get your testimony. We're going to need that soon. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.